Can I throw something out at you?
Yes.
It's been percolating with me, man. So the Colts just signed your boy Minshew.
Yep.
They're not signing him to be the starter.
I wouldn't think so.
They don't have a starting quarterback in Indy, right?
What are you getting at?
I mean, I know we said that the only team that would make sense at this point to go after Lamar Jackson with that non-exclusive franchise tag would be Washington. But you think that there's a possibility that the Colts could go after Lamar Jackson?
That's one of the stories out there, that there's some speculation that maybe the Colts are sniffing around to see. Because the Colts are in a tough spot in the sense that Carolina's taken a quarterback at 1. Houston's taken a quarterback at 2. If the top 2 quarterbacks are C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, according to everybody out there, how much of a gap is there between those 2 guys and the next 2 that would be presumably Anthony Richardson and Will Levis?
Yeah.
Because if and not to mention Arizona's sitting at 3, who's to say somebody further back doesn't fall in love with one of those 2 quarterbacks and then they jump Indianapolis? So it's almost like that trade last week where Carolina jumped everybody and now has Indianapolis picking 3rd when you've got 2 quarterbacks, clearly above the rest. Indianapolis is kind of in a no-win situation because they're the odd man out. They need a quarterback. So, Lamar Jackson might be your best option as opposed to going and drafting a guy. But if you can't get one of those top 2, why would you not sniff around and say, hey, this is something we would consider looking at? From that standpoint, it does make sense. And then
do they have the cap space to do it? Do they have things in play where they could do it? See, that's what I always feel like. If you don't understand the cap situation and what people are able to do, at this point, I wonder what it looks like in terms of getting a deal done, negotiating a deal. Has it been enough time where maybe Lamar Jackson and his camp may be rethinking what they're approaching, or are they being steadfast to what it is that they want? Like, how signable is he? Is it still the same, or is it still going to be, he wants the guaranteed money and wants it in the realm or the ballpark of where Deshaun Watson is, if that's even the case. I'm just curious as to if he's willing to play ball at this point, because again, the more we look at the way this could play out for him and how they could turn into singular league deals where they could possibly ride out this entire year they ride out the entire year on the franchise tag and then possibly franchise tag him again, which I can't see why Baltimore would franchise tag him again versus just letting him go and letting the situation go. But I just wonder where Lamar Jackson is now, and if he's in that type of a place where he actually could be willing to do a deal. I wonder if the Colts would be the team that would do it. So, I know I saw the Commanders sign Jacoby Brissett, and I continue to think that Washington could be that team that should do it, but the Colts make sense as well.
So the Colts are further down the list. So they're 20th in the league. They're at about a little over $10 million in salary cap space. That's the most recent numbers I'm seeing. And the Commanders are sitting at just under $20 million in cap space. It's why the one that people look at and go, what the F is Atlanta? Because Atlanta's 2 behind the Bears, and they've got $40 million in cap space. That feels like that could be something that would make a lot of sense. And also, when you consider the fact that Arthur Smith is entering year 3, and he's got 2 sub-500 seasons, You would think that Arthur Smith and people within Atlanta would go, all right, hey, the clock's ticking. It's why, Robert Saleh, he feels the clock is ticking because he's got to start winning some games, and that's why they're going for broke on Aaron Rodgers. It does feel like that, yeah, Atlanta would make some sense, Indianapolis would make some sense, but one of the stories out there and the feeling from people around the league is teams don't want to do Baltimore's dirty work, to where teams are negotiating a deal with Lamar Jackson only to have Baltimore step in and match the offer. And that's what the feeling is that they know Baltimore's got Lamar Jackson sort of tied up and cornered up in this whole situation, and they don't want to have to do all of the negotiating just to set it up for Baltimore to come in and match the offer, and Lamar Jackson goes back. It's really Lamar Jackson really might have played this thing completely wrong. Like, if you just go back and look at it, like, this is where, the whole conversation about having an agent, maybe there would have been some better advice handed out as opposed to whatever DeMaurice Smith and the NFLPA provided.
Or, again, I've always said I'm not a big agent guy. I feel like if you get somebody, a lawyer that's experienced and understands the language and understands how it, or if you do use an agent, pay them an hourly rate. But anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But I will say this, in these situations, we've seen it play out over and over again, time and time again. And these are the types of conversations that have to be had. They're uncomfortable at times, based upon, where the wants are, the needs are, the reality line that exists in these scenarios. I just don't know that there's a clear line of reality, because it's like, where does it exist for Lamar Jackson? You can be a contrarian because you can say that Lamar Jackson has, dealt with injuries and had, I guess, do I want to say declined play? People can say it was declined play, but what has he really had? What has he really had this past season where you could say, he's got a tight end. I don't know that he's had, Bateman hasn't really, kind of emerged. They get rid of Hollywood. I just think that if you're saying that he's not worth the money anymore, I would think that's a terribly incorrect and inaccurate assertion.
I would say, though, that the injuries are 100% a concern. Like, especially for his style of play. This is 2 years in a row he hasn't finished a season. But
would he have finished the season if he had a contract?
Well, that's the other part. And that's where things get a little bit dicey. That's why, look, we pointed this out. It does feel like there's bad blood there. They can say, John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta can say whatever they want. Just the way this thing has played out, the messaging through the media back and forth, you can't tell me there's not hurt feelings there and not some sort of issue going on. That's what it feels like to me, just looking on the outside. And I don't know and I think you might have brought this up to where you talked about there's the buffer in between you and the team.
Yeah, the cartilage.
So that you don't have to feel, oh, they said that. Because there's been cases of this happening, like Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter's final deal with the Yankees, things got really contentious because he started hearing about what their value on him was at that late in his career. And he was offended and he was hurt by it because he said, hold on a second, what I've done for this organization, and that's what you think I'm worth? I have somebody who's a friend of mine who has a sibling who plays Major League Baseball, World Series champion, multiple-time All-Star, and we're going into arbitration with the team that they were with who loved him as a player, but in arbitration, the team's trying to get the best deal as opposed to the player. And he thought it was a good idea to bring his wife with him to the arbitration meeting and ended up getting talked out of it by his family and by other people around him saying, you don't want her to hear what that team thinks about you. It's like, this is business. It's completely different than anything that you think it is going into it. And as it turns out, they were trying to lowball him, trying to get a better deal for them. And it's like, maybe if Lamar didn't have that cartilage, as you pointed out earlier in the week, maybe we're not at this point. But the fact that he doesn't, he's got to hear all of the negotiations himself, and it's causing problems. And that's why this is so fascinating to see how it plays out. Because gut feeling, I don't see how this gets fixed and everybody's good to go rolling into next season. It feels like we're so far down the road that I wonder if at some point people just start cutting ties and saying, that's it. We did what we could, and it's over with.
If this is a product of him not having an agent, I feel really, really horrible for him. Because but if it's not, then again, I asked this question the other day: where does the negotiations for quarterbacks go? I could honestly say we could say Joe Burrow and Herbert are the ones that are going to probably reset the market at some point.
Yes,
but neither one of them are league MVPs. They don't boast a league MVP. They didn't save a coach's job. I mean, maybe they did, but, well, Herbert has been a part of firings.
Yeah. Joe Burrow absolutely saved a coach's job.
Yeah, Joe Burrow. I'll give you Joe Burrow. But outside of those names, like, are we heading towards Armageddon for how contracts are done for quarterbacks? I mean, what is Joe Burrow going to ask for? What is Jordan Herbert going to ask for? What is Trevor Lawrence going to ask for? And Trevor Lawrence, certainly, I wouldn't put him – I mean, are you putting him in Lamar Jackson's category?
No, not yet. Absolutely not.
So to know that these contracts are imminent and they're looming – what exactly is the standard? We saw the deal get done with Dak Prescott. We saw a deal get done with Kyler Murray. We saw a deal get done for Patrick Mahomes. And people said that Patrick Mahomes deal would not be, no one would be able to get close to that. And then here comes Deshaun Watson. And for whatever it's worth, I mean, people can blame the Cleveland Browns and say they did a horrible deal and this, that, and the other. But they did it, and it reset the market. And it established a new standard and a new expectation for a franchise quarterback. So I would assume, agent or not, if you have a franchise quarterback, which Lamar Jackson is a franchise quarterback, you have to pay somewhere in the market of what a franchise quarterback would receive. Now, I don't know that's obviously it's not going to be more, but I still think that this is kind of setting a dangerous precedence, or it's setting a ceiling. I mean, is there a ceiling to what's going to be paid out? How many times are the numbers going to continue to go up before they cap out? That's what it makes me start to think, especially the fact that no one has jumped on the situation of having a franchise tag guy that's not exclusive.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to watch throughout the course of the offseason.